Hi, hello everyone. I am here and I'm ready to have a little chat with you. Um, this is either the third or the fourth, I don't really remember, but it's another lecture in what is now becoming a series for me where I come on and I talk about the divine feminine. Um, and in the last lecture, I talked about the concept of the mother wound. I use astrological I use the mothers or the queens of the tarot to talk about different archetypes of motherhood and the wounds that they cause. This lecture is a little bit different. This is kind of building off of some things that I didn't get to really touch on in that lecture, just to talk about how some of the myths that we have about femininity may be causing either social or spiritual blocks for us in our life, right? So that's what we're going to be doing here today for the next at least half hour. I see that people are starting to trickle in. As you trickle in, to say hi. I love a hello. And if you've watched any of these in the past, you guys know that I really, really interact with you as an audience while I'm on here. So get settled in, get your wine, get comfortable, drop some scale emojis just to let me know that you're here and with me. Hello, Neg Aja. Hello, Glitter Goddess. It's good to see you all. All right. While you guys are getting settled in, hi, Deja. I'm gonna go ahead and give you all some updates on things that I'm working on rather. Um, some of you may know that I started a podcast at the top of the year, Soleil's Living Room. I took a bit of a hiatus for the last 3 months, so I will be returning with new podcast episodes starting this Friday. So if you guys are interested, definitely go to Apple iTunes, type in Soleil's Living Room, and listen to the old episodes. If you guys have gotten readings from me before or any spiritual or life coaching, I've probably sent you a couple of those past episodes. I think they're really good. I could be biased, but I've gotten some really incredible feedback, and I'm actually really excited about getting back to accessing that space and having more conversations with you guys through that medium. Still taking ancestral life path readings. These lectures have developed into a mentorship program. So we do have a Divine Feminine mentorship program co-taught by me and Dr. Quintaria Shakir or Huganzo. And that starts November 1st. So if you guys are interested, definitely, actually, if any of you guys have the WhatsApp link, hi, Maze Cueto. For those of you who are in the comments, if you have that WhatsApp link, it would be immensely helpful for me if you could put that in the comments, because I didn't think to copy and paste that before I got on here. And I don't want to look for it because I get easily distracted by technology. So, but yeah, I'm taking questions through the WhatsApp, sharing applications for those who are interested. It is a mentorship program it has three things that I'm trying to accomplish. A, talk about the necessity of the divine feminine in terms of spirituality, get us to tackle or at least isolate is not the right word. What is the word I'm looking for? Highlight or find our mother wound and to develop spiritual practices that allow us to heal it. So I think it's a great program. We have several people already signed up. I'd love to have you there if that's something you're interested in. And then finally, I'm always taking readings at voodooinstitute.com/Soleil. You can also follow me at my IG, which is at Soleil. Yeah, at Hunsi Soleil on Instagram. Alrighty, I see that we have a decent amount of people who've come in tonight, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'll get started. I have I made the flyer saying I had 5 myths. Then in planning this, I came up with a 6th. So we'll see how we feel, that tends to be my pattern, is that I end up writing a little bit more, shooting a little bit more than what I say in the flyer, but I don't see anything wrong with that. It's better to have a little extra than to have too less, right? So, hello to Tashiana. I probably messed up your name very badly. I'm sorry. Hi, Darth Obi. Okay. Again, if anyone can get that link to the Divine Feminine Mentorship and put it in the comments, I would greatly appreciate that. So we'll go ahead and get started. I will name the 5 myths, maybe a sixth one, and talk a little bit about why I think it is that they are dangerous and what kinds of dangers or harm do they place us in. Now, some of these actually do place us in the crossfires for physical harm, but the majority of these just do social damage. Okay, good. I'm glad I said it right, Tashiana. A lot of these do social damage as well as spiritual damage, and I think it's really important to understand what that looks like for us so that we know what we need to heal, as well as what red flags to look out for in other people. I was just talking to my godfather earlier today, and I was telling him, like, I have come to learn from my experience with toxic feminines that if I'm meeting somebody and every other thing that comes out of their mouth is, well, I don't like this person, or I don't like them, or they make me uncomfortable. And then you start to realize that half of those people, they've either never met or they've only had cursory interaction with them. That is somebody that I can't share space with. Like you can't get friendship from Soleil. You can't get acquaintanceship because you coming from this extremely insecure place where you have to cut down people and put them on the naughty list before even giving them a chance. That is a very specific kind of chaos that leads to messiness and drama that I don't have time for. So again, I think that's why it's important to have these conversations. You can save yourself a lot of time and energy and just disaster and chaos by being real and honest about what red flags are in relationship to how somebody stands in their womanhood and using that to navigate how you interact in the world, right? So I'm going to start with the first myth about femininity that I think is really dangerous, but quite pervasive in our culture. So if you guys remember from the mother wounds video, I talked about how there are psychological or specific mother wounds that are related to our individual experiences. And then there are the esoteric, bigger spiritual, somewhat societal mother or feminine wounds that are caused by the way that we understand femininity and the way that we groom people into femininity, right? So this very first one is directly linked to that. And it is the understanding that the feminine is weaker than the masculine. That is a very dangerous myth. It is a very inaccurate myth for two reasons. A, we know that every spirit embodies masculine and feminine qualities, right? At least a balanced spirit should. So if you have convinced yourself that part of your spirit is inherently weak, your tendency to nurture that part of your spirit, to give it space, to give it light, to nurture it, isn't going to be very high. So that's one way that that myth is dangerous. Another way that that myth is dangerous is that it plays into this broader societal tendency to demean things that we have marked as feminine, most of the time to our detriment. So I read a lot. I got, as Monse Guido would say, nerd placements. So I'm always in a book. It's just how I stay sharp. And I've been rereading a lot of the work of Manly P. Hall, as well as listening to some of his lectures. He is a scholar who wrote extensively about esoteric knowledge, right? And one of the things that he said that really touched me, and I think it's so true, and it's directly what led to this understanding that the feminine is somehow weaker than the masculine, is that human beings over time have become overly intellectual, too invested in the rational, in a way that has led them to lose touch with reality. Now, what does he mean by that? Over time, and this is very much a 18th to 19th century problem, right? Where specifically the realm of the spiritual has become overly intellectualized in a way that kind of demeans and dismisses the feminine impact or the feminine influence. And again, what did I say at the beginning? If it's part of who you are and if it's part of what is necessary for balance, that means that your intellectual contributions, your spiritual contributions are going to be thrown out of whack, right? So certain things such as kindness is understood as inherently feminine and therefore seen as a weak virtue, right? Now, how is that dangerous in terms of, metaphysics, spirituality, and academic work? Well, you have this understanding that research, contributions, intellectual thought is only meaningful if it's aggressive, if it's cutthroat, if it's all these other things that, yes, are sometimes necessary, but it's not the only way to do intellect. It's not the only way to engage. Another insidious part of that is that so much of the contributions of the feminine get pushed out of the work, right? You guys know that tarot is my divination tool, well, my primary divination tool. I teach tarot. One of the things that I've come to learn is that, when you look at the Order of the Golden Dawn and a lot of these like spiritual boy clubs from which tarot was born out of, they were extremely misogynistic. They pushed away the feminine, right? But now here we are 150 years later, and this field of tarot is understood as being extremely feminized. That happened because it got thrown away by a masculine institution, right? So again, this understand, and fuck all that. If you even look at birth, sorry, if you look at birthing, right? If you look at the womb as the symbol of the feminine, that's not a weak space. Like birthing ain't no hoe. Like it is a powerful thing that represents immense strength. So that is one of the myths of femininity that is very dangerous. I've talked a lot about how it's dangerous in terms of societal action, but how is it dangerous in terms of how we take up space in the world as individuals? I see this a lot, unfortunately, in men, younger men, with this rise of the manosphere. We have to talk about how the manosphere sounds like a gay porn series at some point. We're not going to have that conversation today, but whatever. With the rise of the manosphere and this hyper obsession with being able to control women, we see this understanding that men feel like women are only in their proper place if they are weak and easily dominated. That is dangerous. That's dangerous. That is a dangerous understanding. Not only does it groom men to be abusers, whether psychological or physical, towards women, it teaches women that the only way they can get companionship or love or acceptance in the world is through minimizing and muting their power, which is very, very dangerous. Very dangerous. So again, the number one myth around femininity that can cause spiritual and social blockages is the understanding that the feminine is weaker than the masculine. If you guys are following me, definitely drop some scale emojis. Let me know you understand. It wouldn't be alive if I didn't have a coffee mug full of wine. I'm drinking, not that you care, I'm gonna tell you anyway. I'm drinking, this is my current favorite Shiraz. I'm a red person, and this is called Jam Jar. It's actually really good. It's a little sweet for me, but it's good. So the next myth that I want to discuss that I feel is extremely dangerous, myths about the feminine, is that the ways that you get power as a woman is through being the mean girl. I think that this has a lot to do with post-feminism and a lot of the, a lot of the movies and the things of the late 90s, early 2000s, Mean Girls being one of them, but a lot of things that show younger women dominating, being aggressive towards, and somewhat eviscerating other women. It has caused a dynamic where when people are insecure, they feel like they get their power back by being a mean girl, by hurting the other feminines, by tearing them down, by dominating them. Now, how is this particular myth dangerous? Let me count the ways. Well, the very first one is that rather than dealing with a societal or structural environment, right, an ecosystem that creates oppression or disadvantages for women, you become an oppressor yourself, right? By taking your energy, pouring it into other people that have the same lived experience as you, which will always be fucking ignorant and will always be counterproductive, right? So that's one way that that myth is painful and hurts both the people that embody it and those who have to be subject to it, right? Another way that that myth is very dangerous is that it doesn't do anything about the actual internal thing that makes people mean girls, period. We are all adults. We know what creates a bully, right? What creates a bully? Fear, insecurity, feeling your mortality, feeling that someone else's power is a threat to yours, right? These are all individual problems that need to be dealt with through healing, through dealing with your self-esteem, through fucking finding a hobby. There are so many other ways to deal with it that don't need to take place in the form of tearing down, minimizing, attacking other women. That energy can go to putting money in your pocket. That energy can go to beautifying yourself in a way that gives you confidence so that you don't have to come for other women, right? It's dangerous because it's short-sighted. It lacks vision, and it does nothing to do with the actual root of the problem, right? So that's a very dangerous myth, the understanding that the mean girl is somehow powerful, and that if you are a feminine that feels insecure, you get your power back through attacking other women. That's not how you get your power. You get your power through nurturing yourself. You water your grass. You take care of yourself. But it is a very pervasive myth. And I unfortunately see that shit come up in the spiritual community. I see women where if they put half the time that they spend talking about how other people aren't shit or they not like me or they ain't on my level, if they took half of that time and put it into actually teaching themselves a little bit more about their divination method, reading some sort of book about spiritual history, gaining some sort of grace and dignity in their walk and in their actions, then they wouldn't have the time to feel insecure and pick at and make other women feel bad, right? So that's why that myth is dangerous. It's short-sighted and it puts people in the wrong direction. And that bitch is broken. The mean girl is broken. She's broken. So the focus shouldn't even be on other women, period. It should be on helping that broad heal herself, right? So if you guys are following me, drop some scale emojis. My information is listed in the banner below. So if you feel moved by anything that I'm sharing, definitely share a love offering. You can do that at my Cash App, which is $Larissa Brown, or at my PayPal, which is monzesole@gmail.com. I'm going to get into the third one, which is actually the one that I started with, and it's what I named this talk after. And it's a myth that I think a lot of us, even if we don't stay there for most of our lives, we find ourselves cycling through it, right? As a mommy's girl, I know it was a myth that I struggled with for most of my teens and part of my 20s. And it is the myth that being the good girl will guarantee you being liked, being respected, and that it gives you protection. I'm going to repeat that again. It's the understanding that being the good girl will guarantee that you are liked, that you are respected, and it will give you protection. Okay? My hope is that you guys know that this is a myth, but if you don't, I'll go ahead and unpack it. And again, I'm loving the scales. It gives me a lot of confidence and a lot of power. It literally, hypes me up. But don't be shy about writing questions in the comments either, or letting me know if you have feedback about anything that I'm saying. Because this is a conversation, so I want to know where you guys are with this. Why is the myth of the good girl dangerous? Several reasons. A, The concept of the good girl is way too amorphous. It is a goalpost that can be moved constantly, right? An understanding of what it means to be a good girl in my family or in my community may not translate into other spaces, right? I experienced this both in college and in grad school. I grew up being viewed as the nerd. Pretty girl, badass, but still a nerd. Always had my face in the book, right? And so I grew up being read as like the nerdy good girl in my community, right? I went to college and it wasn't even in technically a different city. It's literally next door. I'm not gonna say where I went to school. If you know, you know. And being on that campus with all those white people and them having fucked up understandings of Black women, there was no way possible for me to be understood or seen as a good girl, right? So, what do I mean by the good girl myth is not going to give you protection? It's too amorphous. It moves around, it shifts based on context. And depending on who you're around and what, social tropes you're dealing with, what stereotypes you're dealing with, whatever, it may not even be possible for you to be understood or seen as a good girl. So you're literally dealing with a concept that shifts based on space, and it's a veil that will never stick with you. You cannot cloak yourself in the idea and the understanding of being a good girl. And that is exactly what I was about to get to next, Brianna. Absolutely. It does open doors for you to be taken advantage of, right? It treats you that niceness and attention based on niceness is primary and more important than anything. In my time, before I was a spiritual life coach, I did regular life coaching. I've had several jobs as advisors or counselors throughout my life. And I spent decades teaching, right? I have seen women get into some very dangerous situations, right? If you've ever worked with college age students and God forbid one of them experiences sexual assault, what's one of the things they say most often about how it ended up unfolding? At some point, they'll say, I know he was acting weird, but this person is my friend, and I didn't want to be mean. I know he was acting weird, but I was just trying to be nice. I was just trying to get through the interaction, right? That is how being the good girl, being the nice girl can get you in dangerous situations. Now, please be careful. Know that what I'm saying is not talking about anything that blames people for what they go through. I'm not saying that. And as a survivor, I would never say that it's somebody's fault that they got assaulted. That is not what I'm saying in any way, shape, or form. But what I am saying is that this obsession with the good girl, the nice girl, is one that is used to groom women into being targets for being taken advantage of. That was a very brilliant observation, Brianna. Thank you. Thank you very much. But those are reasons why it is dangerous. But also teaching anybody that the opinions of others, that the comforts of others is more important or more valuable than their authenticity will always lead to dangerous dynamics. It will always lead to a dangerous dynamic because you are creating an identity that is outward focused, that is dependent on people's approval and accolades and things of that nature. And it's always going to be difficult to have a solid sense of self if you only feel understood, liked, or appreciated based on how other people see you as being a nice or a good girl. Again, not only does it represent the grooming to be taken advantage of, it's an amorphous concept that shifts way too much for you to build an identity around. And I'm gonna add something else. I didn't have it written down, but it's coming to me now as I'm talking. It infantilizes you. It fucking infantilizes you. Do you know how gross I get when I talk to women who are in their 40s and they're calling themselves a good girl? Bitch, you are a full woman. Like, your age is woman. You should have life experiences that represent you in your womanhood. So yes, waiting on the accolades of other people is very dangerous, and it infantilizes you over time. I'm very sorry that you experienced that, Deja. I'm very sorry that that happened to you. But yes, that's part of what's difficult. A lot of women, when assaulted, they freeze, they pause, they go straight into, again, the good girl grooming, right? They think that they can nice girl their way out of it and they can protect their way out of it. And then when you talk to other people about it later, they'll say some asshole shit like that, like, well, it seemed like you liked it. Or why didn't you do X, Y, and Z? Well, most of us weren't taught to punch a nigga in the throat if he's coming, you know what I mean? Like, so it's a very dangerous myth, both physically dangerous as well as being socially and spiritually dangerous, right? It stunts and infantilizes you in a way that makes it hard for you to take ownership and agency of your own body. Again, I speak to women who are in their 40s, sometimes in their 50s, and they have no sexual life, no identity, no sensuality to them, because they're so afraid that if they stand in their body and take ownership of their agency, that people will no longer see them as the good girl. The good girl's out here fucking, she just not telling, you know what I mean? Like, that's not, it's just not a healthy thing to be obsessed with when you step into adulthood. It's just not. And it will stagnate you and it will stunt you. And you won't get the results that you want, especially if you're out in the world trying to date and, you know, have relationship and romance. Most men, at least the healthy ones, not these manosphere fucks, most healthy men want a fully idealized woman who knows herself. So if you are walking around still obsessed with this good girl logic and you are presenting yourself emotionally like a 16-year-old who's obsessed with getting on the honor roll for this term, you are going to turn men off, at least any of the men that are worth something. So that's another thing to think about. Like, own yourself, own your womanhood, be confident. Don't infantilize yourself in that way by being a grown ass woman obsessed with this good girl logic, right? Number 4, I really want to talk about number 4 because it'll get me into another point soon. Number 4 is the understanding that other people are responsible for your emotional regulation. Now, you may be thinking, okay, what does that have to do with femininity, right? An unhealthy feminine is one that cannot regulate their emotions and will oftentimes gaslight or emotionally manipulate other people into believing that they have to deal with their emotions. They can't take criticism. They can't take feedback. They are a fucking nightmare to have on your team if you work in a group setting. But they really genuinely believe that their feelings are king. Whatever they feel is what matters. And that anything that is said or done by the people around them should be to manage their emotions and take care of them. Now, that's dangerous for a lot of reasons. Again, that infantilization, right? Children throw tantrums. Children have a hard time calming down. Have you ever seen a 2-year-old throw a tantrum and even when they're done, even when they're ready to stop the tantrum, they can't get their body to chill? They're like, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a child thing. Ashley, the easiest way that I know to answer your question is to just be confident in being assertive. The reality of being an assertive woman is that somebody's going to call you a bitch anyway, just because they're not used to women being assertive. So the way that you deal with being assertive without quote unquote coming across as a bitch is that you throw that understanding out of your, like, that even shouldn't even be a concern you have. Don't concern yourself with that. B, if you have trained yourself to be graceful, to be articulate, to be educated, then there's really, you basically, if you know how to cuss somebody out without cussing them out, right? Then they're going to look a fool by calling you a bitch anyway. When I worked in education, that's what pissed people off about me the most. I was going to tell you about yourself and you were going to know that you were wrong. I was never going to use a cuss word in your face. I was going to be as articulate and graceful as I felt like being. Now, if you had your panties in a twist about it afterwards, then that's your business. So, honestly, what I have to say, Ashley, is that unfortunately, due to the society that we live in, there really aren't ways to assert yourself without coming across as a bitch to a weak person, to an insecure person. That's something they need to take up with their therapist. You can't be something that allows you to not take care of and stand up for yourself. You just described my boyfriend to a T. He smelled recovering nice girl on me. Yeah. I'm glad that you're standing up and setting boundaries around that, because there are men who, and that's why I brought it up, because one of the other myths that I have, and it was my bonus one, but I'm gonna bring it up now, is that this understanding that femininity is a female issue, right? When it's not, it's an everybody issue. And a lot of toxic behaviors that we see from men and we call toxic masculinity, it's actually toxic femininity, right? And what you just described in terms of the throwing tantrums and expecting people to cater to your emotions, a lot of men do that. And that's toxic femininity. I went on 2 dates with a guy, and in the second date, I pointed out that I felt his behavior was feminine. And it was specifically around that. Because, and again, second date, mind you, we're on the second date. And when I would bring up topics he didn't want to talk about, he would shut down, he'd roll his eyes like a girl. It was a lot. So at the end of the date, because I wanted steak. So I waited until the end of the date, and I told him, I was like, I don't think this is gonna work out. And I told him, I was like, that probably has worked with other women before, but I'm not them. And I don't want to deal with having to heal the feminine in a man. And he was like, what you calling me, a bitch? I was like, no, you feel like one. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the shutting down because you're not getting your way, because you don't know how to articulate, you don't know how to have a conversation. That is toxic femininity. That is a debilitated feminine trait. Right? So I'm really happy for you. It makes me really happy to see that you picked up on that and that you are now setting boundaries around that shit in your relationship, because it's draining. It's draining as hell. But yeah, other people are not responsible for your emotional regulation. They're not. And having tantrums because you don't know how to process, or committing harm against other people because you don't know how to process, is very toxic feminine behavior. That's not healthy feminine. It's really not. So it's a dangerous myth. I have heard people say, I'm not gonna go there. I feel like I've put my own clients on too much blast this week. So I'm not gonna go into the example that I was about to give. But others are not responsible for your emotional regulation. You being a woman does not mean that you can throw tantrums and you can feel however you want and you can burst into tears and that the world is just supposed to come to you and help you deal with it, especially if you're an adult. Learn to regulate your own emotions. You don't have to pull into your masculine to do that. You know what I mean? That's actually something that if your feminine is balanced and healthy, you can figure out how to do quite easily. All right, so now I'm going to get to the final myth that I think is really important. Let me get my fan, because I really love this one. And I wasn't going to include it, but I think it's necessary just because, people need to know. The last fifth that's really dangerous, a very dangerous feminine myth that does nothing to serve anyone, especially other women, is the understanding that your feminine power or your magic declines with age. I look a lot to Daisy culture. So like a lot of my Indian friends, my Punjabi friends, where when women get older, they're celebrated more, right? And there's space to have elevation with femininity and age, right? I hear people in Western culture say some of the dumbest shit about aging as a woman. This weird understanding that you hit a wall at 28 and that somehow you're not worthy of anything is so fucking stupid, especially considering that you have, if you're lucky and if your ancestors deem it necessary, after 28 you have a good 50 to 60 more years of life that you have to go through. So your femininity just expires before you're 30? What? Huh? In addition to that, there's so much that you learn about your feminine through motherhood, through raising grandchildren, through owning business. Your feminine only gets stronger with age. It only gets sharper with age. Your feminine wisdom becomes more powerful as you age. Now, why would you think that people would benefit from us living in a society where people believe that you hit a wall and you lose your feminine magic by the time you turn 28? I hate to use pimp language, but I'm from the Bay Area because that's, you want to break a bitch down. Like, that's what you do if you want to break a bitch down. You tell them that they don't have any worth after a certain age and that they lack value. And not only is that harmful for older women who believe that, because then they stop doing the work of nurturing their feminine, right? They either become actively masculinized or they start to fall into the mammy trope where they desexualize themselves and they feel like their only worth is in servitude to children, family members, and community, right? Think about it. We all have a woman in our family, whether it's direct family or extended family, who, you know, if they became, I use this analogy a lot, if they become widowed at a young age or they divorce at a young age, they just stop dating, stop taking care of themselves, and they kind of become a recluse. They literally give their feminine away because the world has taught them that because of their age and because they cycled through a life experience, that they no longer carry feminine magic. That is fucking dangerous. But it also opens you up to predators, right? Don't you think that if, wouldn't a predatory 40, 50 something man who only wants to go after young girls, wouldn't it benefit him to use that as part of his grooming process? To tell young girls that they're special? Not only that they're special, but that their magic is going to disappear before they even hit 30, right? Like, there's grooming and ignorance that goes into that. And also, I'm glad that I never thought this way, but I do see some women who are in their 20s who talk about women who are older in this way that's like, but you know you're going to become an older woman, right? So wouldn't it help you to listen to the elders around you and let them put you up on game, especially if you are in a position where you are surrounded by elders who have the shit that you claim to want? They have thriving businesses, they own their own homes, they're bad bitches, they're married. This understanding that feminine magic or your divine femininity somehow diminishes with age is dangerous because of the way that it severs community, because of the way that some women can groom themselves or delude themselves into believing that the women that can actually help and heal them are threats to them, are competition to them, are, you know, somehow envious of them in their position, which, when I think about who I was in my 20s, I would never fucking go back. I love my clients who are in their 20s, but when y'all start telling me about y'all dating lives and the shit that y'all go through with y'all fucking supervisors and stuff, I'm just like, ooh, child, the ghetto. Femininity is actually much more like wine than anything else. It gets better with age. You get more wisdom, you get more power, you get more knowledge, you get more you have a better grasp of your spiritual gifts with age. It's just a weird, it, like, no matter who believes it, It is a very weird and debilitating understanding. It's a stupid fucking notion. Some of you guys are walking around saying that, women hit the wall at 28 or 30 or whatever, like your mama's not 75. Please go look your mama in the face and tell her she ain't got no femininity or no power so she can get that belt out. Because I know you grown, but you still need your ass whooped. So I hope that these myths were helpful. I hope that we learned something. I hope that we can walk away from this thinking about, the ways that we can honor the feminine within us and the way that we can empower men around us to balance out their femininity too. Because there would be a lot less violence and lashing out from men if their feminine was balanced. I've referenced the manosphere a couple times, and part of the reason why I've referenced it is because my return podcast episode is going to be about the manosphere. And I had to do the unfortunate work of watching some videos in order to prepare myself. Some of these guys argue like bitches. I'm sorry. Like, I don't know any other way to say it. I wish I had more constructive language. But I personally don't want to take instruction from a man who argues with me the way that 14-year-old girls do. I don't have basic respect for men who talk that way. I'm damn sure I'm not going to let them put their dick in me. So I don't understand what half of you guys are doing. I don't know why you interact with these men. They're highly feminized, and they don't understand that that's part of the reason why women don't fuck with them. But we'll talk more about that in Soleil's living room. The podcast will be out this Friday. I definitely want to thank all of you who joined me for this discussion. Again, I hope that I look really pretty. So I used a new highlight today. Sorry. I hope that this was good and that you all enjoyed it. Definitely feel free to watch the replay, to share it with your friends. Let them give some feedback. If you know anyone who would be interested in the Divine Feminine Mentorship Program, definitely send them the link that's in the comments, or you can email me at Hounsisoleil, HOUNSISOLE@gmail.com for more information. I also post quite often about the Divine Feminine and my mentorship program on my Instagram page, and it is at Hounsisoleil. So go over there. I also do a lot of free readings throughout the week. I go live pretty consistently on my Instagram page. So if you ever want to watch me do some of my divinations, definitely check out my Instagram. That's the space to see me do that. I do have some celebrity battles with my sister, Monze LaBelle Venus, and my godfather, Huganzo, here on the BSN channel. So you can go through the playlist and look at those as well. And if you ever want to book with me, you can go to voodooinstitute.com/Soleil to book a consultation with me or a tarot or bone reading. Or you can call me at 404-654-3246 to schedule with me directly. I'm going to let y'all go. I am going to finish my mug of wine, and I hope you guys have a lovely evening, and I'll see you next week for another installment. Take care.